Welcome to Alchemy Uncensored, a podcast presented by Alchemy Search, a team of professional financial and tax recruiters. Our podcast is dedicated to providing valuable insights into the financial and tax sector of the UAE by discussing the challenges and opportunities faced by employers and job seekers. Alchemy Uncensored is the perfect podcast for those looking to gain a competitive edge in the finance, accounting and tax industry of the UAE. Stay informed on the latest job market trends, developments and conversations to stay ahead of the game. Tune into our podcast to be part of this insightful conversation.
Hi, I'm Rutika. I am a tax recruitment specialist at Alchemy Search, which is a specialized finance and tax recruitment consulting firm based in Dubai. Today, we have the pleasure of having Nibale Hamdan as our guest speaker for the first ever tax podcast organized by us. So just to give a brief introduction, Nibale is heading the tax function of L'Oreal Middle East, where she's a tax director, and she is handling the Gulf and the Middle East region. She has extensive experience in VAT implementation, corporate income tax, transfer pricing, and customs matters. Prior to joining L'Oreal Middle East, she has worked with consultancies like Deloitte and EY in Dubai. And she served as a tax speaker at various events conducted by ACCA and IMA, written tax articles, conducted tax trainings for finance and non-finance teams. And she's a member of the International Fiscal Association, and she holds a master's degree in international business law. So interestingly, Nibale and I have been ex-colleagues in EY Dubai. So I just remember one day we were sitting at Starbucks near our EY office and we were having a very interesting conversation on some work assignment. And at that point in time, I think that was back in 2018, I would never have imagined that 5 years down the line, we would be sitting in a studio recording a podcast together. So it's quite interesting how our career journey spans out. So great, let's begin. Firstly, we wanted to know, you've been here for 8 years in the UAE and you have actually witnessed a massive change in the tax landscape here. So how has your experience been as a tax professional in this region?
That's right, Rutika. It's good to see you again.
Same here.
And as you said, since 2018, we've seen lots of changes and it's a rapid transformation in the region and the tax landscape. We've seen VAT being introduced in KSA and the UAE. The tax policy is changing so rapidly. We're seeing hundreds of laws and regulations being introduced and published. Yeah. It's very important to keep up with all these regulations. Yes. After VAT, also we've seen at the same time actually excise tax, and then we've seen transfer pricing being introduced in KSA, economic substance reporting in the UAE back in April 2019. We're seeing now the CIT in the UAE, which is a big change also for businesses. Yes. And especially to deal with the regulations that are applicable for mainland and for free zone. Correct. And we've seen lately that there is lots of attention on the part of free zone, on the qualifying income or exempt activities and so on. So it's very important to keep up with all these changes within a company, and especially now we've seen discussions on Pillar 2 for the businesses that fall within the Pillar 2 scope, that they have consolidated turnover above 750 million euro. So such companies would have to deal with the CIT implementation in the UAE and at the same time with Pillar 2 being introduced. So lots of transformation. The region that was perceived as no tax region, it will no longer be the case. So this is just right from the past, and it will not be the case again. And actually, we're seeing also tax digitalization, lots of projects, e-invoicing in KSA, which is also coming in the UAE as part of the strategy of the UAE from 2025, which was recently announced. So I think it's going to keep on changing. And it's very important to keep up with these changes and being prepared in framing the tax framework of a company and setting the right tax strategy and the right collaboration between the different teams within a company.
Right. And as you just brought up e-invoicing in the UAE, I think that's going to be the next big thing here after corporate income tax. And so I wanted to know about your experience of implementing e-invoicing in KSA.
It's very interesting to see the e-invoicing project in KSA, which started since 2020, the announcement, the regulation, and then it was phased into two phases. Phase one, which was the lighter phase of the project, and it was live from December 2021, I believe. And then the more detailed part of the project is phase two, which is currently being implemented for most of the businesses, depending on the threshold of their business. It's very important in such projects to know that tax people cannot work in isolation. They do not work alone.
Yeah,
it's
true.
a project that has to be in collaboration with different teams, especially accounting. We work hand in hand with accounting, with the legal team, with IT.
IT is very important in that.
Of course, in the e-invoicing project. And, in the sense of linking the ERP system of the company with the platform of the tax authority in KSA, ZATCA. It's very important to be able to have this collaboration between the different stakeholders within a company, and to have the right knowledge and upskilling, because sometimes it's not necessarily that someone working outside the tax department would know these details. So it's a real collaboration to make such projects successful.
Absolutely right on this. You've worked in consulting and industry both. So we would like to know about your experiences in both the profiles.
I would start saying that there is no right or wrong way to start a career for sure. So for people watching, starting in consulting or starting in-house, definitely there is no right or wrong way. There is no standard way. For me, I started in consulting. I think it was the right path for me, spending almost 10 years in consulting between Deloitte, Ernst & Young. What's very important in this choice is to have a clear career progression plan, and where you see yourself next, and whether you want to become a partner at some point, or whether you want to build your tax department within a company, within a multinational. So it depends. It's a very personal choice. But I would say in consulting, it's also very important that you get to work with different clients. This would automatically mean you have different management styles, you have different expectations, you have different industries. So it's a very rich experience. On the other side, in-house, you get to know the business inside out. You get to grow with the business.
Yeah.
You see each day how the business is doing, and especially if you have the right level of curiosity, that professional curiosity, you will be able to grow with the company in this journey. And you will also be playing that business partnering role, which I enjoy so much in my current role, because I'm able to work with different departments, whether with my colleagues in the finance management committee, whether with accounting, IT, legal. It's very important to also be able to build that tax strategy with the CFO, with the management. So I think both, they have their very rich part, and it's a personal choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my perspective, I think, one thing I don't miss about consulting is the timesheets. That's just on a lighter note though. So that was just the most stressful part of the week for me at that time. So yeah, I just remember the consulting days. So recently, now as a tax recruiter, the trend that I'm currently seeing, particularly in this region, is a lot of tax professionals are interested to move from a consulting role to an in-house role, perhaps to get a wider exposure to different tax laws or different jurisdictions, or just to partner with different business units, which they would not maybe get an opportunity to do that in a consulting role. So what qualities or skill sets would you look for in a person while hiring someone in your team?
Yeah, very. very important question. I think if we start with the technical skills, saying that it's a given, it's not something that you wouldn't expect to have.
No compromise on that.
Exactly. So whether also from analytical skills, accounting norms, financials, knowing the financial standards, and so on. So I would say this is a given. It's not something that you wouldn't expect, or that would be the competitive advantage, I would say. What I would look for is more on the skills that are related to problem solving, to being proactive, not to wait until the last minute to be prepared, to be also creative thinking. You have creative thinking, also in the communication, collaboration, to have the right professional curiosity, to go beyond, to ask the right questions, to have the right collaboration between the teams, and especially in-house, because as I said before, you cannot work in isolation. You would need to know, to collaborate with the legal team, for example, whenever you have agreements that are drafted or updated. You need to collaborate with accounting for the compliance part, for the tax reporting. You would need also to collaborate with the finance team. So these skills would be the skills I think that are needed to succeed in a tax profession nowadays. And it's not only that. We see tax technology, automation, AI. So these are the skills of today and of the future. And we will see that the automation and tax digitalization is here to stay, and it's going to develop more and more.
That's amazing. I think this is really insightful for tax professionals or looking to making a move to industry roles. And it's actually really helpful for me as a tax recruiter as well, because it helps me to get into the minds of a hiring manager, while recruiting these kind of roles. So taxes are relatively new in this region, and I see that a lot of reliance is placed on external consultants for any tax advisory or compliance work. So how important do you think it is to have an in-house tax function within an organization?
It's actually very important. The activities and the functions that are within the tax department are so essential in having a strong tax position. From laying down the tax framework, building the tax strategy with the CFO, handling the tax audits by defending the position of the company before the authorities legally within the tax framework and the tax regulations, to know your tax rights, identifying opportunities, saving opportunities also that are legally there, that are available within the tax laws and regulations, managing the relationship with the tax authorities, also dealing with the cross-functional files, let's say like merger and acquisition, where you have to deal with the finance team for the valuation part, with the legal team to make sure that the agreements reflect the right tax clause. Also, there is a part where it's very important to do a tax upskilling beyond the tax function, which is running workshops, tax trainings for customer care, operation teams, HR, marketing, and so on, to have the tax knowledge within the company. As I said before, in too many different files, we have to deal, and too many stakeholders have to deal with certain files. They should have the tax knowledge to be able to answer the right questions. So tax upskilling and training, I think it's something very important. In addition to that, what we started with is tax implementation. So we've seen lots of regulations and laws being introduced. So it's very important to keep up with all these changes and updates, have the right interpretation and the right implementation within the company.
So very well said, Nibal. I think you perfectly put out the larger picture of having a tax function in place. And it just proves the point that it goes way beyond purely like compliance or submitting the returns on a regular basis. So it's much more than that, as you correctly said. It's about having the tax framework in place, having the tax governance for the organization. And that is why it is so important to have a tax function.
Absolutely.
And I also think for some specialized areas like transfer pricing, it's good to have an in-house tax specialist who understands the business thoroughly, because that is sometimes a limitation of external consultants. They would not understand the practicalities of a particular sector or for that business. So you need to have an in-house person who knows the business so well.
Absolutely, and especially in multinationals where you have lots of intra-group transactions. So
Right.
it's very important to follow the transfer pricing policy of the
Correct.
group, and to have the right markups applied for intragroup transactions, the right documentation, knowing that in KSA, for example, and many other GCC countries, and now in the UAE, will have to maintain transfer pricing documentation, local file, master file, and other documentation, and to be able to justify the remuneration that each of the companies is having. It's absolutely very important within a tax function and MNC.
Absolutely. Recently, I've seen that there's a lot of focus, particularly by MNCs, on sustainability. So when I hear the word sustainability, all I think about is like environmental changes or climate changes, but I struggle to see the link between sustainability and taxes. So can you throw some light on that?
When we talk about sustainability, it's about waste management, it's about reducing carbon emission, and that's it. And there is no link with tax. And absolutely, it's not the case. And I think we will have to at some point see that tax and sustainability, they are part of same discussion. In what's really important when a company is building its strategy for sustainability, taking into account also the tax part, being part of the discussion and the conversation about sustainability. And especially on the operational side, supply chain, and to see also that taxing is important to be for a good impact.
Right.
And what I think also is important is to see that sustainability is a topic that would reflect social responsibility and would reflect also the values of the company and its commitment. From a tax perspective, I think it's also, you could see it on the side of the tax policy, where some tax policies and regulations would give incentives and grants for good practices, for sustainable practices within operation supply chain, unlike some other regulations that would put penalties on some practices. And it's very important to see, for example, we take very practical example that unfortunately in some cases we still see that the tax impact on donation is the same as a tax impact on destruction. And here it's very practical experience where we see that some tax policies, they would not be in the same direction with the sustainability. And so I think it's everybody's job to support sustainability and to be part of social responsibility, and starting from us as consumers in our daily life, to bigger picture as a company and as a government. We've seen the UAE is leading the way in the discussions about sustainability in the region. Also see KSA also having sustainability discussion within the vision. It's so important that we're seeing such developments in the region, and we hope to see that supporting sustainability more and more in the future.
Right, that's absolutely great. And lastly, my question would be like, if you were not a tax professional, what would you be and why?
Always had appreciation and love for all things arts, whether from architecture, from interior design, music, dancing, fashion design.
Wow.
So, and maybe it's the right time also to tell you about my own brand, which is a brand that I created in the last 2 years. It's a brand that is called Maison Rafia.
Oh wow!
And
nice
it's maybe I'll explain more about the reason behind this name. It's a journey that started 2 years ago out of passion for style and uniqueness and adding something maybe. It's not entirely new, but because the designs are, I created these designs. I'm so happy to also share that.
Brilliant.
So it's in headwear, hats, and accessories. And I think it's very important to say that everybody has an entrepreneurial side. And it's very important to nurture this side, whether we are in parallel with our corporate jobs or we decide to take a break and create something like a business or a passion that could be turned into a business. I think my message here is that everybody has an entrepreneurial side, and to nurture this entrepreneurial side and take it to the next level.
That's brilliant. Actually, that's really amazing. I'm really impressed, and I'm really happy that you have followed your passion, doing something completely out of the box. So, I mean, people usually say that tax professionals are boring. There is no creative side in them, but I think you've proved it wrong. So this is really fantastic, and I think you're sending out a really strong and a positive message that just follow your passions. I mean, just because you are following a particular career path, that doesn't mean that you let your passions die.
Absolutely. And I think especially for tax professionals, they are absolutely creative people, and they would be creative not only in tax. I think everybody can be creative.
Yes, we have a hidden artist in each of us. So just on a lighter note, so we would like to end the podcast and we would like to know about you as a person. So just some fun questions like
Go ahead.
What do you like the most about Dubai?
I think two main things. Safety.
Yeah.
And absolutely, it's a land of opportunities.
Right, well said. Which is your favorite holiday destination?
I love nature, so I would say Europe.
Okay, perfect. And what are your favorite things to do on the weekend?
I love reading, so I would say a nice coffee shop and a book.
Oh, I love that too. That's my favorite idea of spending the weekend as well. Thank you so much, Nibale, for coming over on our tax podcast. It was really fun, interesting, and an insightful discussion. And I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. And stay tuned for some more episodes on tax.